Sarah Chen adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses and smoothed down her cardigan as she walked through the automatic doors of Galactic Academy Station 7. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that familiar institutional glow she remembered from her own school days on Earth. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her teaching materials closer to her chest. "Just breathe," she told herself. "You're a literature teacher now. Nothing more." The hallway buzzed with the chatter of students from dozens of different species. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians walked alongside squat, rocky Terranoids. Graceful vegan delegates glided past groups of insectoid Zenthari, clicking and whistling in their musical language. Sarah had to remind herself not to automatically catalog their weak points, their potential weapons, their escape routes. Old habits die hard. "Ms. Chen?" A friendly voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Principal Vextar, a kind-faced Altarian whose tentacle-like appendages swayed gently as he approached. "Welcome to our little corner of the galaxy. Are you ready for your first day?" Sarah forced a smile. "As ready as anyone can be, I suppose." "Wonderful. Your classroom is just down this corridor. Advanced Galactic Literature for our senior students. They're a bright bunch, though I should warn you they can be quite inquisitive." They walked past trophy cases filled with academic achievements, student artwork, and sports victories. Sarah noticed security cameras at regular intervals, emergency lockdown protocols posted on walls, and the faint shimmer of energy barriers at key choke points. The academy was well protected, which was good. It meant fewer variables to worry about. "Stop it," she scolded herself. "You're not planning an assault. You're teaching Shakespeare." "Here we are," Principal Vextar announced, gesturing to a door marked Advanced Literature, Room 247. "Your students should be arriving shortly. Remember, if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to contact me." Sarah nodded and watched him glide away before taking a deep breath and entering her new domain. The classroom was spacious and bright, with holographic displays capable of projecting any literary scene in 3 dimensions. Desks were arranged in a semicircle, designed to accommodate the various physiologies of her students. She set her materials down and began arranging her desk, trying to project the image of a mild-mannered teacher. Her movements were precise, economical. Everything had its place, positioned for quick access if needed. The heavy paperweight went within arm's reach. The letter opener stayed visible but positioned for defensive use. Students began filtering in, their conversations a mixture of standard galactic and various native languages. Sarah observed them carefully, noting the group dynamics, the natural leaders, the followers, potential troublemakers. A lifetime of reading people and situations wasn't something she could simply turn off. "Good morning, class," she began, her voice steady and warm. "I'm Miss Chen, and I'll be your literature instructor for this semester." A young Zenthari raised one of her 4 arms. "Miss Chen, where are you from originally? Your accent is interesting." "Earth," Sarah replied simply. "Sol system. 3rd planet." This drew murmurs of interest. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 3 decades earlier. Most of her students had never met a human before. A stocky Terranoid student, his rock-like skin gleaming under the lights, spoke up. "What did you do before teaching, Ms. Chen?" Sarah's pulse quickened slightly, but her expression remained placid. "I worked for the government for a while. Administrative work mostly. Quite boring, really." "What kind of administrative work?" pressed a tall Altarian girl with curious amber eyes. "Filing, data analysis, that sort of thing," Sarah deflected smoothly. "Now, shall we begin with our first text? We're going to start with something from Earth literature that I think you'll find quite engaging." She activated the holographic display, and the famous balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet materialized in the center of the classroom. The students leaned forward with interest as holographic actors began their immortal dialogue. "This is a story about love conquering boundaries," Sarah began, falling into the familiar rhythm of teaching. "About two young people from families that hated each other, who dared to love despite the consequences." As the lesson progressed, Sarah found herself relaxing slightly. This was good. This was normal. The students were engaged, asking thoughtful questions about the themes and characters. She could do this. She could be ordinary. During the lunch break, Sarah sat alone in the faculty lounge, picking at a salad while reviewing lesson plans. The other teachers chatted amiably about student progress, administrative policies, and weekend plans. Normal things, safe things. "Excuse me, Ms. Chen?" She looked up to see Dr. Kresh, the academy's head of security, standing beside her table. He was an imposing Vorthak, all sharp angles and gleaming black carapace, but his voice was polite. "Yes? I was wondering if you could spare a moment to review our emergency protocols. Standard procedure for all new faculty members." Sarah's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression neutral. "Of course." They walked to his office, where Dr. Kresh pulled up a holographic display of the station's layout. "In the event of a security breach, all faculty are to escort their students to the nearest emergency shelter," he explained, highlighting the various safe zones throughout the academy. "What sort of security breaches are you concerned about?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious. "Oh, the usual. Pirates sometimes. Occasional territorial disputes that spill over into civilian areas. Nothing too serious, but we like to be prepared." Sarah nodded, studying the layout with professional interest. The emergency protocols were adequate but not optimal. She could see at least 3 ways an organized force could breach the outer defenses, and the evacuation routes had obvious bottlenecks that would slow down any escape. "These shelter points," she said, pointing to several locations. "They're well protected? Energy barriers, independent life support, communication arrays. They can hold out for several hours if necessary. What about alternate escape routes? In case the primary shelters are compromised?" Dr. Kresh studied her with interest. "You seem quite knowledgeable about security matters for a literature teacher." Sarah felt a familiar chill run down her spine. "I just like to be prepared. You never know what might happen." Indeed. His compound eyes glittered. "Well, I should let you get back to your preparations. Thank you for your time, Ms. Chen." As she walked back toward her classroom, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Dr. Kresh had been testing her somehow. She forced herself to walk normally, to smile at passing students, to project the image of a harmless academic. Her afternoon classes went smoothly. They discussed themes of honor and duty in ancient Altarian poetry, analyzed the complex social structures in Terranoid epic literature, and explored the concept of sacrifice in human mythology. Her students were bright and engaged, asking insightful questions that reminded her why she'd wanted to teach in the first place. As the final bell chimed and students began gathering their belongings, the same Zenthari girl who'd asked about her background earlier lingered behind. "Ms. Chen," she said hesitantly, "I wanted to thank you for today's lesson. The way you explained honor and duty, it was like you really understood what it means to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself." Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. "Everyone makes sacrifices, dear. What matters is making sure they mean something." The student nodded thoughtfully and headed for the door, but paused at the threshold. "My name is Zixara, by the way. My family are warriors, and sometimes I feel like I don't fit in here with all the academic stuff. But listening to you today, I think maybe there are different ways to serve." After Zixara left, Sarah sat alone in her empty classroom, staring at the darkened holographic display. The girl's words echoed in her mind. different ways to serve. She pulled out her personal tablet and began reviewing tomorrow's lesson plans, but her mind kept drifting. How long could she maintain this facade? How long before someone noticed that her reactions were too quick, her situational awareness too acute, her knowledge of tactics and security too detailed for a simple literature teacher? As she gathered her materials and prepared to leave, Sarah caught her reflection in the darkened window. Wire-rimmed glasses, sensible cardigan, hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, a mild-mannered teacher with nothing more exciting in her background than filing reports and grading papers. But in the depths of her brown eyes, there was something else. Something hard and sharp and dangerous that no amount of careful presentation could completely hide. The first day had gone well, she told herself as she walked through the quiet corridors toward her temporary quarters. She'd managed to blend in, to seem ordinary. Her students liked her, her colleagues accepted her, and even the security check had gone smoothly. But as she reached her room and began to relax, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She'd learned to trust those instincts long ago. They'd kept her alive through situations that most people couldn't even imagine. She activated her personal security protocols, checked the locks on her door, and positioned a chair where she could see both entrances while appearing to simply sit and read. Then she pulled out a book of poetry and began to read, looking for all the world like a teacher unwinding after her first day. But her ears remained alert for any unusual sounds, her peripheral vision constantly scanning for movement, and her mind automatically cataloged every possible weapon and escape route in the room. Old habits, she reminded herself again. Old habits die hard. Outside her window, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and somewhere among them, people she'd once fought alongside continued their eternal vigil against threats most civilians never knew existed. But that was someone else's life now, someone else's responsibility. She was just a teacher, nothing more. She had to keep telling herself that, even as every instinct she possessed whispered that trouble was coming, and when it arrived, her carefully constructed ordinary life would shatter like glass. 3 weeks into the semester, Sarah had almost convinced herself that her paranoia was just that, paranoia. Her daily routines had settled into a comfortable pattern. Morning classes discussing galactic literature, afternoon seminars on comparative mythology, evening hours spent grading papers and preparing lessons. She'd even started joining the other faculty for lunch occasionally, listening to their complaints about administrative policies and troublesome students with what she hoped appeared to be genuine interest. The academy had become her world, a small bubble of normalcy floating in the vast darkness of space. Her students were progressing well, particularly Zixara, who'd begun writing insightful essays comparing warrior codes across different cultures. Dr. Kresh still watched her with those glittering compound eyes whenever their paths crossed, but he hadn't asked any more probing questions about her background. Everything was peaceful. Too peaceful. Sarah should have known it wouldn't last. The first sign of trouble came during her morning advanced literature class. They were discussing themes of heroism in classical Earth mythology when the Academy's communications system crackled to life. All faculty and students, please remain calm. This is Principal Vextar. We are experiencing a minor technical difficulty with our external communications array. Classes will continue as normal while our maintenance teams address the issue. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She'd heard enough minor technical difficulties in her previous life to know what they really meant. No communications meant no calls for help, no distress signals, no way to contact the Galactic Defense Force or any nearby patrol ships. She forced herself to continue the lesson, but her mind was racing. Around the classroom, her students seemed unperturbed by the announcement. Why would they be concerned? Galactic Academy Station 7 was one of the safest places in this sector of space, protected by energy shields, automated defense systems, and a small but capable security force. But Sarah knew that the most dangerous predators were the ones that studied their prey carefully before striking. Miss Chen? Zixara's voice cut through her racing thoughts. You were saying something about Hercules and his 12 labors? Yes, of course. Sarah pulled her attention back to the lesson. The 12 labors represent different types of challenges that heroes must overcome. Each one tests not just physical strength, but mental resilience, moral courage, and the ability to adapt to impossible situations. Even as she spoke, part of her mind was calculating distances to emergency shelters, analyzing the structural weak points of the classroom, and inventorying potential weapons. The ceremonial sword mounted on the wall for their unit on medieval literature would do in a pinch. The heavy educational tablets could serve as projectiles. The emergency plasma torch in the supply closet could be weaponized if necessary. "Stop it," she commanded herself. "You're being paranoid." But her instincts had kept her alive too many times to ignore them now. The morning passed without further incident. But during the lunch break, Sarah noticed increased activity from the security teams. Dr. Kresh moved through the corridors with purposeful strides, speaking quietly into his communication device. Maintenance crews worked frantically on what were supposed to be minor repairs. Sarah made her way to the faculty lounge, where several teachers were discussing the morning's announcement with mild concern. "I'm sure it's nothing serious," Professor Velthar, an elderly vegan instructor, was saying. "We've had communication glitches before." "Still," replied Dr. Martinez, one of the few other human teachers at the academy, "it seems odd that it's taking so long to fix. Usually these things are resolved within an hour or two." Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee and settled into a corner table where she could observe the conversation while maintaining a clear view of all entrances. The coffee was bitter and overly strong, but the familiar ritual helped calm her nerves. "Ms. Chen," called Professor Velthar, "you're from Earth originally, aren't you? Have you ever experienced anything like this before?" "Communication failures," Sarah replied carefully. "They're not uncommon in remote locations. Sometimes it takes a while to diagnose the problem, especially if multiple systems are affected." She spoke from experience. During the Outer Rim conflicts, communication blackouts were often the first sign of an impending attack. Cut off your enemy's ability to call for help, then strike when they're isolated and vulnerable. But the academy wasn't a military outpost. It was a school, for crying out loud. Who would want to attack an educational institution? The answer came to her with sickening clarity. Pirates looking for hostages, terrorist groups seeking to make a political statement, criminal organizations wanting to eliminate witnesses to their activities, or worse, military forces from one of the dozens of species that still harbored resentments about humanity's rapid rise in galactic politics. Her tablet chimed with an incoming message. Sarah glanced at it and felt her blood run cold. "All faculty report to the main auditorium immediately for an emergency briefing. Please remain calm and follow all instructions from security personnel." Around the lounge, the other teachers were reading similar messages. Professor Velthar's normally pale complexion had taken on a distinctly green tinge. "Emergency briefing?" Dr. Martinez muttered. "That doesn't sound like a minor technical difficulty." They made their way through corridors that were noticeably quieter than usual. Sarah realized that the students had been discreetly moved somewhere else. That was smart tactical thinking. Whoever was running this operation knew what they were doing. The main auditorium was a vast space normally used for ceremonies and large lectures. Now it felt more like a war room. Dr. Kresh stood at the podium, flanked by his security team. Principal Vexitar was notably absent. "Faculty members," Dr. Kresh began, his voice echoing through the space, I'm going to be direct with you because the situation requires it. We are currently under threat from an unknown hostile force. Gasps and worried murmurs rippled through the assembled teachers. Sarah remained silent, her mind automatically shifting into combat assessment mode. Approximately 2 hours ago, our long-range sensors detected 3 unidentified vessels approaching the station. They ignored all attempts at communication and disabled our external communications array with focused electromagnetic pulses. They are currently maintaining position just outside the range of our defensive weapons. Dr. Kresh activated a holographic display showing the station's immediate vicinity. 3 sleek, predatory-looking ships hung in space like vultures circling carrion. We believe they are waiting for something, possibly reinforcements. Or perhaps they are simply studying our defenses before making their move. Either way, we are implementing emergency protocols as of now. Sarah studied the ships with professional interest. Their design was unfamiliar, but their positioning revealed tactical sophistication. They'd chosen spots that minimized their exposure to the station's weapons while maximizing their ability to intercept any escape pods or shuttles. "What do they want?" asked Professor Velthar, his voice trembling slightly. "Unknown. They haven't attempted to communicate their demands or intentions. This could be a piracy operation, a terrorist attack, or something else entirely. Or a military operation," Sarah thought grimly. The kind where leaving witnesses wasn't part of the plan. "The students have been moved to secure locations throughout the station," Dr. Kresh continued. "Your job is to remain calm, stay in designated safe areas, and follow all instructions from security personnel. Do not attempt to contact anyone outside the station, as this could compromise our defensive measures." Sarah raised her hand. "What about evacuation procedures? If the situation deteriorates, what are our options?" Dr. Kresh's compound eyes fixed on her with that same unsettling intensity she'd noticed before. "Our emergency protocols are robust, Ms. Chen. However, evacuation may not be possible if those ships move to intercept our escape pods." In other words, they were trapped. As the briefing concluded and faculty members began to disperse to their assigned safe areas, Sarah found herself walking alongside Dr. Martinez. "This is insane," he muttered. "Who attacks a school?" "What kind of monsters target children?" Sarah had seen enough of the galaxy's dark corners to know that monsters came in many forms, and few of them had any qualms about targeting civilians. But she couldn't say that without revealing knowledge she shouldn't possess. Instead, she offered what comfort she could. "The security team seems competent. The station's defenses are designed to handle situations like this." "You seem remarkably calm about all this," Dr. Martinez observed. Sarah forced a weak smile. "Panic won't help anyone. Better to stay focused on what we can control." They reached the designated safe area for their section, a reinforced conference room near the center of the station. About 20 faculty members were already there, their conversations a mixture of worry, speculation, and forced optimism. Sarah chose a seat near the back of the room, positioning herself where she could observe everyone while keeping the exits in sight. Old habits. Hours passed slowly. Emergency rations were distributed, along with water and basic medical supplies. Dr. Kresh provided periodic updates, but the situation remained essentially unchanged. The 3 ships continued to hover just outside weapons range, waiting. But waiting for what? Sarah's question was answered when the station's emergency klaxons suddenly blared to life. Red warning lights bathed the conference room in an ominous glow. Dr. Kresh's voice crackled through the communication system, and for the first time since this crisis began, she could hear genuine fear in his tone. "All personnel, this is Security Chief Kresh. Long-range sensors have detected additional vessels approaching our position. Estimated time of arrival is 47 minutes. All defensive systems are now active. Repeat, all defensive systems are now active." Around the room, Sarah's colleagues looked at each other with growing terror. Additional vessels meant this wasn't just a random piracy operation. Someone had planned this attack carefully, bringing enough firepower to overwhelm the Academy's defenses. She closed her eyes and felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. These people, her students, her colleagues, innocent civilians, were about to become casualties in whatever conflict was playing out above their heads. And despite all her efforts to build a new life, to become someone ordinary and unremarkable, Sarah knew that her past was about to catch up with her in the most violent way possible. The question was no longer whether she could maintain her cover as a simple literature teacher. The question was whether she could save these people without revealing exactly what kind of monster she'd once been herself. Outside the conference room, the station's automated defense systems hummed to life, charging weapons that might not be enough to protect the thousands of innocent lives aboard Galactic Academy Station 7. And somewhere in the cold depths of space, more ships were coming. Time was running out. The additional vessels arrived exactly on schedule, their sleek hulls bristling with weapons as they joined the first 3 ships in a coordinated formation around the Academy. Sarah watched the tactical display that Dr. Kresh had activated in the conference room, her trained eye immediately recognizing the attack pattern. Classic encirclement maneuver. No escape routes. No mercy. These weren't pirates or common criminals. This was a military operation. 6 ships total, Dr. Kresh announced, his voice tight with controlled fear. Heavy armament, unknown configuration. They've begun jamming our defensive sensors. Around the room, faculty members clutched each other for comfort. Professor Velthar was quietly weeping, while Dr. Martinez stared at the display with the hollow expression of someone watching his own death approach. But Sarah wasn't watching the ships anymore. She was watching Dr. Kresh. Something in his posture, in the way he held his head when he thought no one was looking, triggered a memory from her previous life. She'd seen that stance before, in briefing rooms and command centers across a dozen different worlds. Military bearing, command presence. Dr. Kresh wasn't just the Academy's security chief. He was something else entirely. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The Academy wasn't just a school, it was a cover. And Dr. Kresh wasn't the only one here living a double life. The question was, did he know about her past, or was he as committed to his cover as she'd been to hers? "Incoming transmission," announced one of the security officers. "They're finally making contact." The main display flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a figure in sleek black armor, their features hidden behind a featureless helmet. When they spoke, their voice was electronically modulated, cold and utterly without compassion. "Galactic Academy Station 7, you are harboring a war criminal. Surrender Sarah Chen within 1 hour, or we will eliminate everyone aboard your station." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah felt every eye in the room turn toward her, saw the confusion and dawning horror on her colleagues' faces as they realized that this nightmare was because of her. "I don't understand," whispered Dr. Martinez. "Sarah, what is this person talking about?" But Sarah wasn't looking at her fellow teachers anymore. She was looking at Dr. Kresh, and she saw the exact moment when his own mask finally slipped. Recognition. Not surprise, but recognition. He'd known all along. "I need to speak with Ms. Chen privately," Dr. Kresh said, his voice carrying an authority that hadn't been there before. "Everyone else remain here. Do not attempt to leave this room under any circumstances." Sarah stood slowly, feeling the weight of her carefully constructed life crumbling around her. As they walked toward a smaller adjoining office, she could hear her colleagues' whispered conversations behind them. "War criminal? That can't be right. She teaches literature, for crying out loud. How could we not have known?" Dr. Kresh sealed the office door and activated a privacy shield before turning to face her. When he spoke, his voice carried a tone she'd never heard from the mild-mannered security chief. "Colonel Sarah Chen, Terran Special Operations Division, registration number 7749 Alpha Sigma." He paused, studying her face. "Though I believe you held the rank of major when you disappeared 3 years ago." Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward where her sidearm would have been, then stopped when she remembered she was wearing a cardigan, not combat armor. "Who are you?" "Commander Vashati Kresh, Galactic Defense Force Intelligence Division. Currently assigned to deep cover operations." He gestured toward the sealed door. "This academy has been serving as a safe house and intelligence gathering point for the past 4 years. And my presence here was supposed to be temporary, a place to lay low while the heat died down from the Proxima incident." His compound eyes glittered dangerously. "Except the heat never died down, did it? Someone's been tracking you this whole time." Sarah felt the familiar chill of imminent combat flowing through her veins. The careful, controlled teacher named Sarah Chen was falling away, revealing the weapon underneath. "The Proxima incident was classified at the highest levels. How could anyone track me from that? Someone talked. Someone with access to classified information sold you out." Kresh activated a secure communication channel. "The question is, what do we do now? Those ships out there have enough firepower to turn this entire station into scrap metal. 3,000 students and faculty, all dead because someone wants revenge." Through the small office window, Sarah could see the stars and the dark shapes of the ships that had come for her. She thought about Zixara writing essays about warrior codes, about Dr. Martinez worrying about communication failures, about all the innocent people who would die because of choices she'd made in another life. "Tell me about those ships," she said, her voice taking on the crisp, professional tone of a military briefing. "Armament, crew complement, tactical capabilities." "Unknown class, but heavily modified. My sensors indicate approximately 50 crew members per vessel, full military loadout, advanced shielding. They're carrying enough firepower to reduce this station to atoms, but they haven't fired yet. Because they want me alive. Dead martyrs don't suffer properly." Sarah moved to the window, studying the enemy formation with professional interest. "The Proxima incident, that's what this is really about, isn't it? They don't just want to capture me. They want to make me pay." "What exactly happened on Proxima?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, remembering smoke and fire, the screams of the dying and choices that had seemed so clear at the time. "We were investigating reports of illegal weapons trafficking. What we found was much worse. A slavery operation, hundreds of sentients being processed for sale to the outer systems. Men, women, children. And my orders were to gather intelligence and withdraw. Call for backup. Let the bureaucrats handle it through proper channels." Sarah's reflection in the window looked like a stranger, someone harder and more dangerous than the mild-mannered teacher who'd been grading papers just hours before. "I decided that some things were more important than following orders." "You went in alone." "Not alone. My team came with me." "All volunteers." The memories were sharp and bitter, like broken glass in her mouth. "We freed the slaves, destroyed the operation, and eliminated everyone involved, but some of the traffickers were connected to powerful people. Important people. The kind who could make investigations disappear and turn heroes into war criminals." "How many died?" "On their side, all of them." Sarah turned away from the window. "On mine?" "Everyone except me." The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of shared understanding. Both of them knew what it meant to make the hard choices, to live with the consequences of doing what was necessary instead of what was legal. "So what's the plan, Colonel?" Kresh asked finally. "You're going to evacuate everyone you can." "Use the confusion when I surrender myself as cover." "Absolutely not. This isn't a negotiation, Commander. Those people out there came for me. Once they have what they want, they might let the others live." "Might isn't good enough. And besides," Kresh's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned was the Vorthak equivalent of a grim smile, I didn't spend 4 years building this cover just to abandon it when things get interesting. Sarah studied him carefully. What exactly are you proposing? Instead of answering directly, Kresh activated another display. This one showed the Academy's internal structure, but highlighted sections that Sarah had never seen before. Hidden passages, concealed weapon caches, defensive positions that weren't on any of the public blueprints. This academy isn't just a school, Colonel. It's a fortress, and it's been waiting for someone with your particular skills to activate its full potential. As Sarah studied the hidden schematics, she began to understand. The academy's peaceful exterior concealed a sophisticated military installation. Emergency shelters that were actually hardened bunkers, maintenance corridors that were really tactical movement routes, educational equipment that could be quickly converted into defensive weapons. The students are already in the secure areas. They'll be safe as long as we can hold the outer perimeter. Kresh's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd planned for this exact scenario. But we need someone with your experience to coordinate the defense. Sarah felt the last remnants of her civilian identity falling away. The gentle literature teacher who'd spent weeks worrying about lesson plans and grading papers was gone, replaced by the soldier she'd always been underneath. What kind of defensive capabilities are we talking about? Military-grade energy shields, automated weapon systems, enough firepower to give even a fleet pause, but it needs someone who understands tactics, who can think like both predator and prey. And after? If we somehow manage to survive this, what then? My cover is blown. Everyone will know what I really am. Kresh's compound eyes met hers steadily. Then maybe it's time to stop pretending to be something you're not. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Colonel. It needs people willing to stand between the innocent and the wolves. Through the office door, Sarah could hear her colleagues' frightened conversations. Their confusion about who she really was and what she'd done. In a few minutes, she'd have to face them, to see the fear and betrayal in their eyes when they realized that their mild-mannered literature teacher was actually one of the galaxy's most wanted fugitives. But right now, she had more important things to worry about. "Show me the weapons inventory," she said, and her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who'd been born to command in battle. If they want a war, let's give them one they'll never forget. Outside, the enemy ships moved closer, their weapon systems charging with deadly intent. They'd come expecting to find a defenseless school and a broken fugitive. Instead, they were about to discover that some lessons are best taught through fire and steel, and that humanity's greatest strength had never been the ability to appear harmless. It was the ability to become absolutely lethal when protecting what mattered most. The hunt was about to become a war, and Sarah Chen was done pretending to be ordinary.